I think Zurich, our view was exactly this piece to say, to get the benefits out of blockchain, we need to work together as an industry. So we've done little bits. We launched something, and I think the Benelux business, as a sort of really an experiment. It was something which was low-hanging fruit, but generally our efforts are to work with B3I to actually make sure that we get the broader benefits which are possible. We've seconded some people to B3I as well to learn about actually blockchain and the technology. So that's something we've kind of really worked actively with them. But generally speaking, our view is let's work in this way as an industry transformation. As I said, we have a big focus on commercial insurance. So actually when that product comes into the roadmap, that's something very important. So when the sponsor of that will be Jim Shea, who's our group head of commercial insurance, and Christoph Terrien, who's the group chief operating officer. And they're the ones I had to persuade to say, look, let's invest in this. This is an important thing for the transformation of the industry. So I think the principal measure I have on this is whether it's causing... Let's just turn this down so I can hear myself in Portuguese. But it's very confusing. Is this arriving on the desk of our board meetings? So is this something which is a fire, right? And it's not, right? This is not something where we're hearing huge noise. We are testing this. We have engaged with regulators, and it's been quite fruitful, right? So it's not something where we're seeing massive problems and we're saying, oh my gosh, we need to get on a plane to go and persuade this regulator or that regulator this is the right way. It's something where it seems to be working. We don't seem to have a lot of protest. Now, we are looking, first of all, at reinsurance. So we have less, maybe, personal identifiable information. So potentially we get to kind of more as we get into more primary insurance. But so far, it's not something where we see a lot of pushback from the regulators. I think you did, right? But I guess my view is, in terms of, what was it called, the Cardoso or Cartorio? And it's very similar in Switzerland, right? So for B3I, I have to go and put wet signatures for every time I have a board resolution or an EGM or we want to issue some shares. So I know that. And actually, I talked to the notary in Switzerland and said, guys, this is perfect for a blockchain, and they're actually looking at it in Switzerland. So it's a very good use case. Now, the difficult thing about all of this, it's the same thing the guys in the pictures around marine cargo faced. It's the same thing all of the industries which have been transformed faced, was change, right? Change is all about people. So it's not the making it happen and digitalizing it, that's a little bit difficult, but changing the way we're doing, that has an impact on some people, right, who maybe would have different jobs because it could be more automated. But you still need some of those services. You still need lawyers, you still need the translators. So it doesn't mean to say that it all disappears. It just means that actually you have a digital record versus something which is recorded in a big book somewhere. So I think it's a great use case, and using that can help us then to actually understand, what are the companies, who are the directors of those companies, what are the buildings, what's happened in terms of changes in those buildings, which are things which are very useful to us as an insurance industry. So all of those changes around us can then be information we can use. So, but yeah, I think the simple thing is, yes, it's a very good blockchain use case. Making that use case happen is about change, and that's about people. Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I would say is, and we've been doing this with B3I the last year and a half, probably 2 years. So if we can get almost a United Nations of insurers and reinsurers to kind of agree upon some things, it must be possible also to do it in the Brazilian market. And my advice is to sort of choose a small problem and break things down bit by bit. So if you try and say, well, let's do this for the whole of the insurance market, no chance, right? It's boiling the ocean. But if you do it for a small problem, one which you can all agree and say, yes, this is something which is a problem for us, let's look at how blockchain could solve this. And the same applies for anything, right? Whether that's looking at how AI can solve things, or how, other things which are not so digital, right? There's a bunch of stuff we can do which are non-digital, and then say, okay, let's really do that, build, measure, learn, and then deliver that thing, and then move on to the next one. So really, that's how I see that we have success. Trying to build something in 3 years' time and getting to the end, the things have changed anyway. So really, that's my advice to you. You said it was a very simple question. I'm not sure it's a very simple answer. I mean, I think it can be all three. So one thing I talk about sometimes is digital lipstick, right? And I think there's a bit where we do some digital lipstick, we make an app, right? And sitting behind that is the same analog process. I generally see blockchain as something which can more digitally transform the industry, but there are aspects and there are use cases which can be more in that digital lipstick. I think so, but I think what it can do is enable us to have a better view of risk information, and I think that's really important. We've got some of that information, but we would have a much better view of it, and that's something which. So I don't know which of the three it is, but having and knowing a lot of underwriters, being able to really be clear on, okay, this is the information to make informed underwriting decisions. I think also having that data can also enable us to offer more services, right? And things like risk prevention services. So as a claims professional, of course, we want to pay what we owe, but if we can also give advice to the customers so the claim doesn't happen, that's something which is good for us as an industry, but it's also good for the customer as well, because customers don't want the interruption which a claim comes. So I think it can do some of the digital lipstick, it can enable us to actually properly transform, and it can also allow us to then offer new services and propositions. So it's kind of all three. It's a bit of a get out of jail free answer, but I think that's where it fits. You always give me the hard questions, Paolo. So I mean, I think you're right. Probably it is not sequential. There's a lot of backwards and forwards. That backwards and forwards happens now, right? And it isn't that information passes from the customer to the broker to the insurer. There's a lot of backwards and forwards. I think at the moment the benefit that blockchain can bring is to have that single version of the truth, because probably what happens, and I know a good example is we insure, I won't say which customer, a very, very large multinational company. And one thing we tried to work out simply was, where are all the locations which this customer has insured? And it's got tens of thousands of locations. What are those properties made of? Where are they? What are they doing there? And between us, the customer, and the broker, we did not have a single view of that. We all had different information at different points of time. And actually, this can allow us to, through that backwards and forwards, to actually say, okay, we have a single version of the truth, but a better version of the truth, because whether it becomes absolutely complete, but I think we can then sort of augment all of what we all had to being, this is the best version of these things. And that's a really simple example. It's a tangible thing like a property. When you start looking at something more intangible and casualty, it makes it much more complicated. But to be able to get to that single version of the truth, there's still going to be multiple parties who are interacting with that. The benefit the blockchain brings is we can understand what changes have been made by who, and to trust that what's in there. So I think it just means that we can better actually rely upon the information, and there will still be all this many people interacting with that data, but ultimately to get to better quality data. So let me start with what is B3I, right? So B3I stands for Blockchain Insurance Industry Initiative, and it's a company which is owned by 16 of the world's largest insurers and reinsurers, and together we're looking to understand how can a technology like blockchain enable the transformation of the insurance industry. So I think the key point in blockchain is a technology which is called something immutability, which means that we know that it can be true, and it can allow us to permission and share data amongst participants by permissioning who can and can't see that data, and to trust that that data is actually the correct data. And then it can allow automation on top of that by using things called smart contracts. And of course, around all that is cryptography to make sure that the data is not being corrupted by people, or people see it who shouldn't do. So our view on what we need to do to transform the industry, it starts with standardization. So it's working and looking at how our insurance model can get to something which is more standard, so we can all agree this is what we mean by the data. We then can integrate that data, and then we can automate using that standardized data.